This is the CW Spiral, a podcast run by three survivors of the CW's calling in 2022. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network and the WB, the latest news and in-depth Sporterville discussions of the best and messiest shows to ever grace the small screen. So when we started doing our outline for this podcast, we thought we'd only have two pieces of news, but last night news broke and the strikes are over. So that's exciting for production for all of broadcast, with exception to the CW, if they stick to their April release window. I mean, it's not that the writers' rooms aren't open. We do know Walker is open and Superman and Lois, and presumably that means All-American and All-American Homecoming's writers' rooms are back or will be back shortly. But as far as us getting our shows back, that may not be happening by the early 2024.
I mean, I'm happy that obviously the writer's strike is over, but the CW had this thing in place where its shows would come later if they needed to, since they had all the acquisitions. And they did say that the shows would come or 3 of the 4 shows would come in March, May, between March and May time, which I mean makes sense. But now that the strike's over and that things are starting to go back, set back in motion, it does make you wonder if the CW will be the last of the pack to catch up with the rest.
And in some ways, I feel like that means, could it be strategic? Is there a method to the madness? Because everything else will be coming back, and then most of it will be starting to go off by the time that the CW shows come on. So they could be setting themselves up to not have to compete with the competition on the other channels.
I'd love for them to have thought that strategically about it.
But you're saying no.
I don't want to give them too much credit. Perhaps they stumbled upon a good idea. I don't know.
I mean, it's possible. But we do know that Superman and Lois will be the last of the CW originals pre-Next Era to premiere its unfortunate final season. I know people were saying it's like writing on the wall because of the massive amount of cuts, and it just did not seem like the CW was gonna give way to a season 5, but it's still sad news.
It is. I mean, I want to get the good bit out of the way first because I have a lot of other stuff to say about it, but it's good that it's going to get a final season. It's good that it's going to get to go out on its own terms, and it's good that these 10 episodes are going to wrap the show up. But it is a little disappointing because when we heard that it was sliced and diced to within an inch of his life, the logic voice inside my head was like, well, this gives it another year, potentially maybe 2 years. And we know that James Gunn was happy for it to go on for 1 or 2 more years while they got Superman Legacy ready. And yeah, sure, the strike impacted Superman and Lois, but the strike also impacted Superman Legacy. So they were both stuck in that little kind of stalemate. So once things got back up and going, there's no reason that Superman and Lois couldn't have carried on for 2 more seasons. Well, we waited for Superman Legacy, but I don't know, maybe they just went back to the drawing board and WB and CW had some conversations and just decided to end it here. And I mean, I understand that and I respect that, but the show was envisioned as a 5-season story. So the fact that we got so close and this is going to be the season without some of the cast members in it full time, it's kind of disappointing. I'm excited to see how it goes out. I've no doubt that these writers will come up with an amazing way to end the story, especially now since we've kind of inadvertently found our way to Superman versus Lex Luthor, which does feel like a final season story. So that's going to be fun. But bittersweet all week because we hoped that the renewal could have guaranteed it maybe 2 more years of life because we know that was on the table at one point. It's just unfortunate that it wasn't to be.
I think come the time that, it returns, the fandom will have rallied together. It'll be a very communal experience as we watch these last 10 episodes. I do want to ask the network not to drag us through the entire summer with Superman and Lois. I would like to go through, no interruptions, just 10 episodes, week to week, and then we wrap it up. I can't do what we were doing in season 2.
No, we don't need that 10-week hiatus.
No, thank you. But also coming in 2024 is WWE NXT, which beat NWA to the punch. It's coming in October of next year, which is exciting for the sports entertainment fans like you, Michael.
Yeah, I don't want to brag, but fast forward or rewind back 2 weeks ago on this podcast, I did say sports entertainment at WWE would be a good one for the CW. I mean, just when I'm out, they reel me back in, because we lost the main reason I'm watching the CW this week, but we also may have gained a new one. So just for a quick catch up, WWE NXT is like the third brand that the WWE has. Raw and SmackDown have the main superstars on it. And there's ever since a couple of years ago, they have what's called the brand extension. So there are different superstars on Raw and different superstars on SmackDown. And once a year, they have a draft where they draft superstars from one show to the other and back and forth and whatever. NXT is like it's their developmental brand. It's for the younger superstars, the up and comers, to kind of make a name for themselves. When it first started 10 years ago, it was more kind of like what I call the wrestling version of the X Factor, in that it was basically a competition series and the winner would become the next big WWE superstar. They did away with that format and decided to turn it into a proper brand of wrestling. So it had storylines, it had matches, and they have their own like special events once a month, just like the main brand. So it's really, really cool to know that it's going to end up on the CW of all places, because that's where SmackDown was almost 2 decades ago. And what is very, very interesting is that what a platform this is, because I know everyone says the CW is the fifth of the big five, but it's still one of the big five. And NXT is currently on USA Network, which is obviously a cable network. But SmackDown is currently on Fox. This time next year, SmackDown will be moving to USA Network, which means NXT, the little show that could, their third brand for the up-and-comers, is going to be the only WWE show on network television, on broadcast television, so which means it's going to have the widest possible reach, which is kind of amazing, because the up-and-comers, the potential superstars of the future, the legends of tomorrow, if you will, of WWE, they're going to have the biggest audience, the widest reach, and I just think that's so cool. In recent weeks, WWE have been having main superstars on NXT to try and get the viewership up, because they compete with the other wrestling brand. AEW also has a show on Tuesday nights. So in recent weeks, they've had the NXT Women's Championship was held by Becky Lynch, who's a Raw superstar. One of the NXT titles was held by Dominic Mysterio, who's a Raw superstar. They had John Cena appear on NXT. They had The Undertaker appear on NXT. So they've been going all out to get the viewership of NXT up. And now we know that it was to set the stage for its debut on network TV, which I just think is the coolest thing ever, because now the young superstars have a huge platform on one of the big networks, which is just awesome. So if NXT can draw 900,000 viewers on USA Network, who knows? It might be able to break that 1 million mark on broadcast television. It's an exciting time. I could ramble about WWE and the CW and NXT all day, but I am excited about this. Fun fact, I recently watched my first episode of NXT a couple of weeks ago. It was the one The Undertaker appeared on. No surprise there then.
Pretends to be shocked.
So, yeah, I'm ready for this. I kind of accidentally called it a couple of weeks ago. It's super exciting times. And if all the outlandish programming the new CW has ordered, this is one I can get behind, because it's a perfect blend of sports and entertainment. And didn't I say 2 weeks ago, that's what this network needs more of?
Yeah. It is. It's 2024 could be amazing for the CW. I, for one, want to see the marketing plan. I want to see how these promos start rolling out and how exactly, I mean, we had tried to manifest sort of a promo campaign was like the ones of old, the WB and the CW had done, where everybody under the roster had to do a whole thing together that was supposed to introduce like what was going to be happening for the year. I want them to do that again. I want to see the WWE NXT wrestlers. I mixing it up with some of the cast members of like Superman and Lois. And like, I mean, how cool would it be for Clark Kent to be fighting like a real life wrestler? That'd be awesome. I just want, I want someone at the company to be thinking about this. Just pull us in.
Relaunch.
They need it.
Yeah.
Relaunch campaign. Come on.
Yes. I mean, with everything, like with the strikes done, they can bank these and they can do one big one to just really bring us into the year.
Yeah. Look, I didn't even take a marketing class in college, and I'm like, come on, we need a relaunch campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I dropped the marketing. I went to one class for marketing, and I said, no, not for me. And I dropped it. I took PR instead.
But no, you're right. I think the crossover is an amazing idea. Remember those classic CW promos when the network launched? And you would have like, was it the One Tree Hill cast, the Smallville cast, and
A
suddenly
green
Batista
screen
from
in a
SmackDown?
dream.
Exactly, all at
Yes.
the same time. So we did the crossover work then. It certainly works now. And I remember not was Smallville season 6 was the first one that premiered on the CW because it was 2006, I believe. Um, they had Ken, the WWE superstar, the Undertaker's brother, appear in an episode of Smallville as a wrestler from the Phantom Zone that Clark had to take on. So I mean, like, you get
We
one
need the
more
Undertaker in
opportunity.
Sullivan's Crossing season 2.
Yeah, exactly. The grouchy old man in town. They can make it happen.
Wait, Michael, I
Yes.
wanted to ask, but I feel like I understood through context clues. NXT doesn't stand for anything. Does it mean next?
I
Is it supposed
believe
to be
that's what it
next?
means. Yes, I
Because
believe
everything
that's
you
what it
were
means.
saying made it seem like, oh, these are the next superstars. So I was like,
Yeah,
okay, I see what's
exactly.
up.
The next generation. And then in a couple of years, they're usually called up to Raw and SmackDown. And then we have a new generation. So yeah, I do believe that's what NXT means. It's the little show that could. Everyone loves it because at the end of the day, it guarantees the future of the company. So if they can use one of the WWE's classic networks like the CW to make it work, all for that. I think that's
Let's
awesome.
let's hope it's the little show that can.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Fingers crossed.
And does.
Yeah. Okay. Well, moving straight into our two-part finale of Tarzan. Uh, I feel like we should just talk about the two episodes together rather than trying to keep them apart because it really was set up as a two-part finale, which I mean,
It
Reed, I
was.
think that you were correct that the writing was on the wall and they had decided to just go ahead and do this real quickly.
Yeah, it was giving limited series, which I didn't mind. Although I'd
Mm.
still do, I would have loved 5 more seasons. But the way that, like, I appreciate that. Like, it's a nice little limited series.
Hmm.
Who was doing that in 2003? No one.
No, I mean,
But like, I love the fact though that like in that time, in retrospect, you get canceled after 8 and it's seen as a failure. And I'm like, no, you just made a great limited series.
Yeah.
it did. I mean, rushed ending. It was a rushed ending, but the
Yeah.
limited series as a whole was fantastic. We had a starting point and we got to our end point, and most of it was wrapped up.
It
Mhm.
was. And not to jump ahead to the final episode, but it was an unusual blend. We played everything out like a normal episode. And suddenly, those 5 minutes were filmed like a series finale. It was like, do what you got to do. You got it done. And surprisingly, Tarzan got in and got out. Um, but yeah, like what a ride it took us on to get there because the final 2 episodes, different flavors from each of them. But it definitely, we said last week, it felt like it kicked off the series season finale kind of trope. This was like a trilogy of finale episodes. Each one offered something different. And yeah, I really loved both of them.
The episode 7 really slowed us down, but in a
Mhm.
way that worked. I liked finally being out in nature with Tarzan and Jane being the one who was on the back foot. And she clearly did not want to be around the bees, the water, the trees, anything that didn't. She's like, why? She loved being that it was just the two of them, but she just hated being away from the concrete jungle, even though this wasn't really a jungle, love.
I did love seeing him get to take her in her element because he's been so like fish out of water in the city. He feels so displaced. And now he's like, welcome to my home.
Mhm.
And that was beautiful.
It
It
was.
was.
If Tarzan was based on a comic, this would be the comic accurate version. It definitely felt like it was true to the story because this whole season was been all about, like, of course, Jane showing Tarzan the rope, so to speak, of how to live in the city or the concrete jungle. And this episode was very much like what a Tarzan series of the original ilk could have been like. And it was really, really nice because it was such a role reversal. And we kind of needed that before the show bowed out. So I'm glad they actually took the time to do it. Sometimes when the press pause on the main story, it can feel like a grind to a halt, but this was necessary. And, the two actors sold it really, really well because I could have watched them. We went from knowledgeable, learning, sweet, potentially romantic, 40 minutes to Predator really, really, really quick. Those last 10 minutes of the episode was all about the hunt. And they pulled it off.
He was just climbing trees, right? Or trying to. That's what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Because I was waiting for like the Bella and Edward moment where he grabs her and puts her on his back and starts climbing trees.
That would have been funny. I think for the amount of time that they had in episode 7, our penultimate episode, there's a lot of like breath to it. I felt like I was watching a movie. It kind of felt like the pilot episode, where the pilot episode felt like we were moving through a lot really fast, but it worked because it felt like a miniature movie. The same thing with this penultimate episode. I did enjoy how much time they got to spend together before the predator section happened. I thought that it really illuminated the differences between the two, but how Tarzan stands to spark something in Jane where she wants to try new things, even if they're out of her comfort zone. I didn't believe him when he said he wasn't mad at her for what she said about not knowing him and therefore not wanting to run away with him. But I am glad that they moved past it.
Yeah.
rather quickly, because he took the night, played with some wolves, and he was fine.
Yeah, what she said to him, it hit hard, and there's no doubt about it. They had that moment where he kind of looked at her and like she was like, "Is he going to come back in?" And then he just slammed the door in her face. Like, no, come on, tell me this man was mad. Um, but yeah, I'm glad they kind of jumped past that as well because I know what she said needed to be said, but for me that kind of felt like it came out of nowhere because it ruined quite a good, nice moment between the two of them. Um, and then, of course, we did get over it in the end. And that was the whole point of this episode. She had to see things through his lenses because the whole season he's been trying to see things through hers. And we do go back to that in the finale. He's learning all about like sports metaphors and stuff like that. But in this episode, it was all about her seeing things through his eyes. And between the fact that he was able to like calm the wolves and play with the wolves and tell her about how to like dull the pain of the bee sting as well, she definitely got to learn things from his perspective. And I think that was necessary. Well, I mean, I'm glad we got it done. The show was ended abruptly, even if it managed to end right. But I'm glad we got to do that because when you pivot a show on its head like Tarzan had did, and it was very much him out of his element, we don't necessarily need to do the other thing. But I think in this case we did because he spent the whole season trying to learn things about the jungle. And one thing I did think was quite nice in this episode is he mostly learned the ways of the concrete jungle, even if it wasn't his home. But he did point out that he never really felt back at home in the real jungle either because there was no one like him. And I'm not saying that Jane is incredibly like him, but he sees something in her that he connects with. I thought that really sold their story really, really well, especially since it had such a short amount of time to do that.
I think for the story they were trying to tell, though, at least in terms of, the difference between the law of the jungle and the law of man, a little shallow. And it's in the way that they were exploring it in the series as a whole. I say that because they were always brushing up against, how he's a person of action. Tarzan is someone who's like, no, I'm not going to wait for like authorities to handle a situation. I'll just handle it myself. And Jane's always like, oh, but there's like rules to things. Like we have laws. There are certain ways you have to carry yourself and interact with people. And I was like, I get all that, but there's nothing about these situations that really says that Tarzan's wrong in his thinking either. And you're not making a good case for the justice system, which may be the point. But we haven't really talked about how it's a broken system on the show. I mean, she does kind of get there when she says, you don't have to trust any of that, just trust me. And I was like, that's true, but you are not an authority in the system. So even if he trusts you, it still could have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
And the fact is, it's been a learning journey for her as well because she's been trying to learn about her rules and stuff and seeing. I like the fact they brought back the rules at the end, because when that came up, I remember the three of us were like, "Oh, this is just going to be an episodic plot and it'll be dropped after that." So that was kind of series finale-esque that they brought up the idea of the rules again, and the Tarzan generally felt that there was nothing he could do about it other than what he was going to do because the rules were not in his favor, and the rules weren't in Jane's favor either. The finale had a lot of work to do and it mostly pulled it off. But some of the things I thought that were kind of about it was the fact that the captain who kind of trusted Jane and trusted Sam very much so in the previous episode was like, arrest warrant is being issued just to force the plot forward so she could be taken into custody and thus get out of custody again. And again, maybe that was a series finale decision they had to make quickly. And then the fact is Jane operates like a detective again for the majority of that episode, but yet we're all aware of the fact that her rules won't work. At the end, she figured out a good way to do it that ticked all the boxes. I do feel like there was writing done in the finale that was like, okay, we don't have time to tell the story we're going to do, so we're going to get as quick, cheap, cheerful ending as possible. And they did pull it off. But like the fact that like Donald didn't get his moment to stand up and say the right thing, but they managed to disprove him anyway and make him look like an unreliable witness just to protect him from Richard, and that Richard, the big bad villain, was just left there with egg on his face in the courtroom. It was like, oh, well, that's that then. Whereas Richard would have more vengeance about him if it was. I don't really know where I was going with that, but overall, I was just trying to say that generally the finale did what it needed to do. It brought back some nice key themes and elements as well that we did discuss throughout. And it was a solid ending to it. I agree. I would have liked to have seen more about how the system was not Tarzan's friend, even though he was innocent, about how the system was something that Jane had to tackle as well. We never really did find out if she got her job back either. So I guess they're just open-ended questions.
I never would have imagined when we started the show that it would end with a courtroom scene. Never would have imagined that.
And one that we sped through with a coda over it. Very, like, we knew how it was going to end because the song was very happy and upbeat and twangy, which, I mean, I like the song as a standalone, not necessarily overtop the scene, but I do think, for as much as Jane kept talking about the rules and the ways that they have to do things, she gamed the system. That's how she won. She didn't go through it the proper way. She went through it by discrediting Donald, who was completely fine with it because he just wanted to go home. And he was able to. I think the most interesting aspect outside of like how they were going to untangle the web they had weaved throughout the series was Richard and Tarzan and their standoff. As like we seem to be getting into this like little bubble of sense when it came to Richard, because we've been struggling for a few episodes, like, what is his end game, what is his motive? And the idea that it's literally just about control, and it is he said it's not a game. Kathleen called it a game, but he said it sounded like chess. I'm impressed with him. He makes a move, I make a move, it's my turn to counter. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting dynamic between the two that we're not going to actually get to see unfold.
I'm confused though, kind of, and maybe it's simple, but it seemed like when Tarzan got acquitted, is that a legal word that happened for him? When he was found not guilty, it seemed like Richard was like, oh, well, this is over. I don't understand how that ends up being like the emancipation of Tarzan, because wouldn't Richard still want to like claim Tarzan?
Yes.
Have control of him? I don't know how that court decision makes it. They made it seem like Richard lost.
They did, but I put in our outline that it gives lifetime movie ending, because that's how those movies tend to end. Like they have 3 minutes to wrap up the plot, and there's one thing they didn't tie up and doesn't quite make sense, but then someone will get on the phone and say something very evil, and they're like, oh, sequel. They just chose not to do that in Tarzan. I think I would have actually liked for them to do, like, after Tarzan and Jane take their shoes off and they have that cute moment as they're walking out of the courtroom, for Richard to get on the phone. And have something else to say, because at least then it's an open-ended ending for the show. Like, Tarzan's free right now, but Richard isn't down for the count.
It was very much like we could have had that in there, but we chose not to kind of moment. Maybe they ran out of time, I don't know. But yeah, I agree. I feel like, so where we stand now, Richard has no legal advantage over them anymore. He can't use Tarzan to get what he wants. He has no legal claim over the company now that everyone, or over Tarzan's inheritance, now that everyone knows Tarzan exists, now that everyone knows he's not a murderer, now that everyone knows he's not clinically insane. So I believe Richard was defeated in that element, but what we know about him, that's why the whole, like you said, Reed, that like, oh, well, that's it, I've lost, doesn't really gel with the man who was saying jungle and animal metaphors a few minutes ago beforehand about how it's the law of the jungle and he's going to win and he's going to play dirty. Maybe we're supposed to believe that the whole like violent altercation with Tarzan changed his mind. I don't think it did.
That was crazy. Did we talk about that yet?
Not yet, no.
When Tarzan went feral? It was dark and I was shook. He was throwing flaming trash cans off of that overpass.
Yes, it was very dramatic. I appreciated both of the actors in that scene because, like, Mitch Pileggi was, bleeding and dirty and dusty. Like, he was broke, busted, and disgusted, walking down the tracks and just screaming, just screaming the entire time. But it works as a means of tension. Because I felt unsettled waiting for Tarzan. I was like, where is he?
It
Because
was
it's
really
very
effective
dark.
suspense.
Yeah.
We kept hearing sounds and seeing things. I almost thought, like, is it not Tarzan?
Yeah, they
Right?
made it sound like wolves or something, which again made sense with the scene before or the episode beforehand. And it was very well shot the way you could just see like the ghostly figures passing by in the shadows. Very Batman like. I've made that comparison before. But it definitely built the tension really well. I literally wrote down the tension's at an all-time high. And I think maybe is that because it was the series finale as well. We were worried that is Tarzan going to go too far and there'll be no coming back from this, because that would have been a heck of a cliffhanger.
I was honestly cheering him on. I was like,
I know.
You deserve it.
Right?
Both of you deserve this moment.
And for Richard spending the whole season plotting in shady corners of limousines, it was pretty what's the word, apt that he got his comeuppance in a limousine. I really
Still
enjoyed
don't know
it.
what he does for a living though.
We don't.
No.
That one of the big questions I have written down for the finale. We never find out what Greystoke did.
I wish it was technology. We still, like, not only do we not know what Greystoke does, but also Tarzan can just do things.
We needed sci-fi, like, quickly.
We did. Because, like, he also just slows his heartbeat down to, like, to appear dead. He's like, you can't do that. I was like, people can't do that, Tarzan. I would like to know why you're able to. That doesn't seem like something you would develop in the jungle.
It's not something you can learn.
I know, like, what the sci-fi was in the text. We just never acknowledged it. You know what would have been a serve of a cliffhanger, jumping off of your Richard getting on the phone, if he does like go into a shadowy corner of the courtroom, or like we find him back in his study and he's on the phone and it's revealed he's like, we need to do something, I need your help, and the other end of the line is Kathleen. I just really wanted her to go bad. I wanted her to go dirty and like be a villain too. Like, we needed an unholy alliance.
Yes. Well, because there's this look that she gives, though, I think, in the courtroom, or maybe it was in a different scene that briefly had me going, like, wait, if we had gotten a season 2, is Kathleen going to turn coat?
She has
what is
secrets.
happening? She does.
She's so like holier than thou. I'm like, there's something, you're hiding the skeletons in the closet, and it was locked. We never found the key.
No. She came back refreshed though from the episode that she had missed, because I wasn't her haircut.
Yep.
I was like, okay, Lucy Lawless has been somewhere.
Her nephew was fighting for his life, and she's like, I'm gonna get a bob.
We've made the comparison before about how she feels like an 80s Dynasty character, and I definitely got those vibes in the finale as well. Of course, when we first saw her, she was like sitting up on the couch, like, so you haven't seen him in days. I was like, do something, Kathleen. And then she did do something. When she, like, that scene between her and Richard, so good. I love their scenes together. I wish we got more. Their back and forth was just so good. And she wanted to save his life, but for Tarzan, I'm sure she, like, deep down, there was a wee bit of her that cared about him, even if he didn't make it easy. But like, he was having none of it, the back and forth. And then I won't repeat the line, but the line she said to Richard at the end is like, you're speaking an element from metaphors. I can be a real. I was like, oh, I want this, Kathleen. Loved it.
Well, and that still would have worked for what Reed had said too, because then a simple way to get around that in season 2 would be that they knew that the police were listening in on them in Richard's study. So they need to keep up the facade that they actually hate one another. And like, once the bug is gone and the police are off Richard's back, we can go back to plotting like we usually do. Like, the public facing, we hate each other. Internally though, we're thick as thieves and we're going to get this inheritance.
Would have been so juicy. I feel like the end of this season really tied up the story they were telling, the story they got stuck telling, because they just really kept committing to it, and they wrapped it up. And I think a season 2 could have been like a fresh start, where maybe Jane doesn't need to be a cop anymore, and it's not going to be a cop show. It could have just been a whole new thing. We actually learn what Greystoke is. They mix up I feel like a lot of things that we had like wanted to happen or like predicted would happen happened. Like
Mhm.
Sabrina, you were like, there's going to be a one-off line about Nikki. We don't know where she was, but she was mentioned.
Right. When that came up, and it was to Sam as well, because I think that's what you said, Sabrina. And it was to Sam, and I like the fact Jim was like, "Oh, I can't be out there when Nikki's out, or when Nikki's worried about me." I was like, "Couldn't we have
Glad
seen
she
her just
remembered
one
she
thing?"
has a sister.
Yeah, right, right. She was like, "Yeah, let's go off and live in the Congo." I was like, "But Nikki, what about Nikki?"
She gives Sarah in Superman and Lois the amount she cares about her sister. What's the little one's name in Superman and Lois?
Oh, Sophie.
Sophie. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
it's giving.
Yeah, towards the end of the season, it definitely gave that. I think so. Sam said he would take care of Nikki, so I guess we
Yeah.
were just going to keep her comfortable at the apartment or something. I have no idea, but I really disliked how like we came to an abrupt ending too, because the world was opening. We got to see Sam's apartment,
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
and it just we could have been there for a little bit longer. I also like if we could just move away from the precinct too, that would have been great. I know one of Jane's talking points was, I have a job, or at least I think I do. I was like, how about we just, resign from the police force?
Like, what
Please.
if she could have ended up teaming up with Kathleen? Because doesn't Kathleen like run some sort of publication? She could have been like
Mhm.
a police consultant for the paper where she like helped report or something. I don't care. Fabricate a job where she comes up with something else that's related to her old job. And that's how people like stay in the mix. Like she ends up finding out that Kathleen's not who I really wanted her to be bad. Every time I mention Kathleen, it's like I'm pushing her toward villainy.
Yeah, but it makes
Because there's
sense
something
though.
to do.
Yeah, exactly. I like it. Well, it would also explain why she was off screen so much. And I know there was only 8 episodes, and she was in like 6 of them, to be fair. But a lot of those episodes, she showed up in the first scene to say hi to John. She showed up in the last scene to call him back after he'd like jumped off a roof or something. And it would explain why she was off screen so much. I just find even the way they handled her, Kathleen remains such an intriguing character to me. And I hope there was like a depth of like secrets and maybe lies beneath that, and we never really got that. Um, and yeah, we always did say Jane was kind of like had reporter elements to her as well, so that was she could absolutely could have pulled that off as another job. Um, and watching these 2 episodes back to back, it really reminded me of something you said last week, Reed, was that the reason last week's episode was so good, so high intensity, was that they dropped the procedural element of it. And now we got 2 episodes that dropped the procedural element of it. And you really did say, like Sabrina said, the world was opening up. We got to see so much more. And I thought that was so good because, like, for an episode, again, that technically pressed pause for half of it and just focused on Tarzan and Jane, it was so much more engaging than those halfway baked villain of the week plots we got.
It
Yeah,
was.
it proved what the show can do when it focuses on rich storytelling. Even it was possible that the show could do quieter moments with just 2 characters. They write those characters together really well. Not that we need every episode to be Tarzan and Jane in a jungle flirting and doing whatever else they did, but I'm like, there was so much potential.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I really want to know what happened behind the
I
scenes.
just why pull the plug, especially when the scene. I don't. The budget was budgeting. In the last 2 episodes, not just with being able to see Sam's face, but also we had gotten characters that were important to the plot and just weren't like one-offs. And Michael, you had said that in order for the procedural cases to work better, we need to actually be invested in the characters that they introduced us to. I was invested in the young lady who liked Donald as a person
Mm-hmm.
and wanted him to get the help he needed. She stuck around for a bit. So I was like, oh, this is what Michael was talking about. This is what we needed, actually, because she also, if they seated her right, we could have had her around in either ways if they wanted to let that happen. I just think that we were getting to the places that we needed to get to, and I guess it just wasn't fast enough for the WB, but it was getting there. I just felt like you could see the ways in which they were growing, and I wish it hadn't been cut short, especially because we were getting somewhere with Tarzan and Jane too. And no, spoiler alert for people who have not been watching the show along with us, but have been listening or watching our podcast, there is no kiss between the two. Kathleen kisses Tarzan on the cheek, but Jane does not kiss him on the cheek or at all, period.
But I think way in the beginning, I don't know what episode it was, if it was episode 1 or 2, 3, when I said this, but I was like, she's gonna call him Tarzan and it's gonna be a moment. And I gasped.
Yeah.
I gasped. And I clutched my pearls. I was like, it happened. It came true.
What a moment. And if
That was like so much. I mean, I would have loved to kiss, but it was, to me, for me, the way I was watching this relationship, it was so much more intimate than the kiss for me, because it was finally her. They felt equal now. I don't know. There's something about it, and the symbolism of her taking off her shoes, it also felt intimate.
Yeah.
Of being like, it's us together now. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna meet you at your level and stop trying to push you into a box and hide you away. Like, you can be who you are. I don't know. I just loved that, how that ended up.
It was so good. And the fact that it was like the episode was literally called The End of the Beginning. It was like we finally shed that original storyline. John has overcome this. He's no longer John anymore. And a lot of it was for Jen accepting that this person called John Jr. wasn't actually your typical person. And she really struggled with that throughout the whole thing. We even saw it in the penultimate episode. Like the fact that he's not like anybody else and he's so innocent, but he can be aggressive when there's wrongdoing done. That was the moment she finally accepted him as Tarzan. And you're right, that was, if anything, that was the right way to go out. Because you do end with such a sense of fulfillment, even if we didn't go everywhere we were going to go.
I think so too. I just wish that we had more time with them. Which is funny because it's not like every episode we watched didn't have very vulnerable and amazing moments between the two of them, whether they were romantic or they were about character development. All of it worked together to present you with this pair of people who love one another. Like, obviously it's season 1, so they were never going to get to the love declaration, but it's very obvious that they do, even if they don't quite understand each other all the way. They're on the road to being able to like accept each other's differences, see where they connect, and also learn from one another. I think that's one of the great parts of their relationship, is that they're learning together. It's not just that Tarzan is learning about the city from Jane. Jane's learning a lot about letting go, and that everything doesn't have to be just so. You can embrace the unexpected.
And it can be exciting. And there is no one that won't say that John or Tarzan didn't bring a lot of excitement into Jane's life, because I think that was part of her eternal struggle, and that she liked things perfect. She liked things as she can see them. She liked things as she can understand them. And stressful as that life was for the last 8 episodes, it was exciting to her. And I think she really finally figured that out in the jungle episode, or in the forest episode, if you will. And yeah, on that note about the world starting to open up, like the cabin setting, the forest setting, like in today's day and age, you don't see that many shows I film outdoors for so long. Obviously,
they were
it was
on location.
They were
that night shoot too.
Yeah, again, and I used the Predator comparison, big budget movie versus slow budget TV show. The fact that they pulled it off, testament to them. You don't see things like that.
And I respect that. If you're going out, use every penny that you're allotted.
Yeah, it ain't going anywhere else.
No. So what else from the final 2 episodes? So I really just want to talk about Tarzan and Jane again. The innocence of the two of them. I guess if we were to get Eric Kripke on the pod, he might discuss that part. That might be the reason why there isn't a kiss. I'm not necessarily invested in one. I think it's more so I thought that the fake outs were contrived, so they might as well have done it. But I do, to go back to Reed's point, I do like that the calming intimacy of their relationship is her calling him by his name. After he's a freed man and they've gone through all of this together, it shows that she sees him completely now. And I think that's great acknowledgement, especially because she spent like the whole season just calling him John. It wasn't even interchangeable. He said he has 2 names. Use them both if you're going to use them at all.
Yeah. It was full circle. And I mean, like, I'm not sure you can get better than that. Of course, romantically. We wanted a kiss, of course. That's where it felt like the story was going. But Tarzan, if anything, was probably a story about learning and acceptance on both their parts. And you can't really get more accepting than that in that final scene. Everything was where it needed to be by the end. And even if the whole story wasn't told, the bare bones of it was told. And I think that we've talked about a few shows that came to abrupt endings, even though they had more than enough warning, that didn't make the most of it or bit off more than they could chew. The fact that Tarzan had quite a lot of pieces in play and managed to deliver as satisfying a finale as that in probably, let's be honest, probably one, maybe two episodes. Testament to them. Very well done. I really couldn't have asked for more.
I keep harping on it though, but I can't help but feel like the ending was also a beginning.
Yeah.
I feel like we were just getting started.
Oh wait, was that the title?
Yeah.
The end of the beginning?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So, I mean, maybe that's what they meant. Like
it was the end of the beginning of their story. It was a new beginning.
Not gonna lie, I'm a little sad that this journey has ended. It feels like when we finished Windy.
Yeah.
And then we were told it wasn't coming back. It just feels like that we should have been in this playground a little bit more. We're 20 years late, so it's not like there was a campaign launch or anything. But
we need it though. I feel like a reboot, not even if it's not the same actors, just like a reboot of the story. Because I'm sad that it's over and we don't have any more. I'm sad for the potential that wasn't able to be taken advantage of, even in these 8 episodes. It's as much as I adore this show, I mean, we've been talking about it for 7 weeks, how much there's in the show that we're like, the push and pull. I wish they got to do, had gotten to a place where they could tell looser stories or something else. It just feels so stuck in this, like, we have to figure out this situation. I don't know. It's bittersweet because I do love it. And then I'm like, so much potential, so much that could have happened. I don't know. Was the world not ready for it?
Maybe not. But I mean, remakes happen all the time. I mean, The Buccaneers is on Apple TV Plus right now. And that was, I don't remember if it was a 1995 film or a 1995 series.
I've never heard of it. I was like, what is this?
Right. But I mean, it looked very cute when I was looking at the trailer. But I mean, if we can bring back things that had premiered in the 90s, we can do the same thing for the 2000s. It's been enough time for Tarzan to be rebooted. And we can start again. Just no Jane as a police officer.
Sci-fi this time.
Yes. Sci-fi in the city. Nikki actually gets to do things. If we have Sterling
Greystoke is.
Right. If Sterling K. Brown is in it, he gets to actually have something to do.
I mean, we have some pretty solid notes and ideas, I feel like.
Yeah.
And throughout our whole journey, we've had some great concepts.
I know.
Even in this episode.
Right. And this show had like what we would have called a lot of up and coming young actors back then. But like, imagine if we did a revival 20 years down the line, like there would be some huge names now. Of course, Sarah Wayne Callies has enjoyed such a success. Travis, of course, as well. Lucy Lawless, of course. And Mitch Pileggi's always there. But like Leighton Meester coming back. Could you imagine that? Wouldn't that be like finding out where all these characters landed 20 years later? Richard's still desperately trying to get that inheritance. Maybe Kathleen ousted him 2 decades ago and he's trying to get back in. That would have been so exciting to think about. But what's also interesting is that could you imagine if the show was as successful as Smallville and it was still on the air for like 10 years in the way that Smallville was? Like, it would have only ended in 2013. It would have
been so good.
Right. Yeah. All the stories they could have done. I know a lot of these big actors would have missed out on their big roles of the roles of a lifetime that ultimately made them. But like, yeah, if Tarzan had been the success, that could have been that role for them. It's just unfortunate how it never lined up, because for the time period it came in, the content the show was giving, procedural nature aside, it should have worked. It's just such a shame that it didn't.
It's about when it came on. It really was just poor timing in terms of what else was on television. I mean, even if maybe they dropped it in the summer, we could have been talking about, the 7 seasons of Tarzan. Or like on this pod. Like, do you remember when we were such and such age and we were sitting there rooting for Tarzan and Jane and waiting for Nikki's return? That would have been really great.
Sad. I'm just like imagining what, because I feel like they could have abandoned the entire conceit of season 1 and just like rebooted everything, and it would have gotten even better. It would have been one of those shows like you just got to get through season 1. You got to get through season 1.
For sure. There's so much they could have done. Tarzan could have encountered the homeless problem in the city. And then like I just really wanted, everything didn't have to be a PSA, but for like Tarzan to be someone who, you know, wasn't aware of whatever was going on in the US, you know, is learning about community and the way humans treat one another. Him being like someone who wants to be very involved in the community would have worked. Vigilante era Tarzan too would have been great. That'd come 3rd season.
Yeah, definitely. They just have the Tarzan signal and turn it on. But like, yeah, Jane and Sam could have set up a private investigators organization. Tarzan could have been the resource they used because everyone wondered how they always got the job done. There would have been so much there. They obviously would have had to come up with a lot more personal drama if the Richard stuff was gone, a lot of more personal stuff to Tarzan. But like you said, Sabrina, seeing the city through Tarzan's eyes, that would have presented so many rich opportunities for that.
Subway fight.
Yeah, oh my goodness, yes.
It's like all of our ideas. Okay, you know what? If anyone's doing a reboot,
producer credit for the 3 of us,
right? Like, watch our pod, talk to us, do any, like, just let us come and help.
We have ideas.
We
endless.
do.
Yeah,
we see the vision that was not envisioned in 2003.
Someone is gonna be listening to this and drop a comment and be like, "Y'all should be the vision, be the change you want to see."
I have a pitch for new Tarzan or Tarzan and Jane's son, KJ.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Boom. I'm already in casting mode.
Listen, we got ideas. The Mole found a way to bring WWE back to the CW. We got this. We can do this.
Yeah, Mole, take your time, but I really feel like this is one that could work out for everybody. So, I mean, get cooking, Mole. We'll see you in 2024. We'll give you that much time. You have a deadline, Mole.
Get the paperwork together.
Yes. You should end it there because the Mole's going to be like, I'm not taking any more notes.
Yeah.
The notepad is full.
She's clicked that by now.
But this is the end of our Tarzan journey, which means that we have to pick a new one soon. But we do have a Thanksgiving special coming up that we're really excited about. We are watching an episode from Gossip Girl and an episode from Gilmore Girls. It's going to be a double feature. So you can join us. I'm going to give you guys the episode titles now, just in case you want to get yourselves ready and get us some questions. But it is going to be Gossip Girl Season 1, Episode 9, Blair Waldorf Must Pie, and Gilmore Girls Season 3, Episode 9, A Deep Fried Korean Thanksgiving.
So excited.
So rad,
Yes. We'll see y'all then. Thank you for listening and for watching Where the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Bye, y'all.